This is my favorite part of the podcast. The intro music. It's very calm.
Welcome to the Overheard Podcast, recorded live in Banff. My name is Daniel Ruedl. With me always is my co-host,
Matty Rage. Let's go.
Let's go. Election coverage underway. We want to thank you for joining us. Our fourth guest today, David Fullerton.
Hi.
Let's
Thanks
go.
for having
David
me.
Fullerton. Sorry.
Well, you don't have to, you can skip the doctor part. The only person I make call me doctor is my brother. So.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. If it's your first time joining us, we mentioned it a few times today. Lots of people join us for the first time. They don't subscribe. If you're a first time joiner, please hit the like and subscribe. Helps us grow the metrics and bring you more guests. We got plenty more coming down the pipe. We plan on expanding. We got lots in the works. So please join us for the ride.
Hell yeah, come along.
Hit the little bell so you'll know when we got new episodes out, which will happen more frequently. So before we get too far into things, we got to check in with our sponsor. Friends over at Drink Shaft been winning best in class awards all over Alberta. Let's go give them a shout.
No doubt. We're back, baby.
All
Let's go.
right. We're back. As you all know, autumn in Banff, it hits different. We got crisp air, golden larches, and early sunsets. We're going to keep that mountain energy going with Drink Shaft, the non-alcoholic all-espresso energy drink made for the adventure lifestyle, which I can say we all love in Banff.
No
Bit of
doubt.
adventure
Absolutely.
lifestyle. Fall's all about fresh starts, cozy vibes, and staying sharp. That's why we're going to fall into Shaft. Clean energy is for everyone, and it's now available in 800 stores across Western Canada. So go get yours today. Seasons change, but Drink Shaft, let me tell you, that stuff stays the same.
No doubt.
Right? I might crack mine here. A little sustenance for this episode. David, thank you again for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How's the day been so far?
So far, so good. Yeah, it's been very busy, but it's such a gorgeous day out there. I love
it's
seeing the
awesome.
snow out there. It's getting me really ramped up for the ski season. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same. I know it's not going to stay. We were talking about this a little bit before.
I know. That's always the sad part about that first snowfall.
I'm so excited for this winter. I got a feeling it's going to be a good one after the few duds we've had in the
no doubt.
past.
Indeed.
So if you've never met David Fullerton, we got a little bio. David was born in Olds and raised in Red Deer. His connection to Banff began on the ski slopes. He and his brother competed in freestyle skiing and later deepened their love for the backcountry on horseback, culminating in a family ride of the entire Pacific Crest Trail from Canada to Mexico. Growing up around his family's commercial truck sales business shaped his understanding of the constant balance between economy and environment, a lens that he carries into his community life. David earned a mathematics degree from the University of Montana and a doctor of chiropractic from Palmer West. After a brief practice stint in Australia, he moved to Banff and over the last 20 years has built a successful chiropractic practice, serving both locals and visitors, something we'll touch on a little bit later. His daughter was born and raised in Banff and is now in grade 12. His parents have also retired here after nearly 15 years of operating the Jasper riding stables. Grateful for all Banff has given his family, David is committed to keeping this town thriving, sustainable, and in balance. Pretty wild connection to the park.
Yeah.
I mean, with your family operating Jasper riding stables.
Yeah.
So that connection runs pretty deep.
It does. And I think that, like we're going to talk here probably about perspective, but I really gained a lot of perspective around that whole like operating a tourism-based business in the park. There's a lot of dynamic to that. That's
100%. A lot of dynamics, a lot of red tape,
yeah, for sure.
a lot of unique pressures as well. All stuff we'll touch on in a bit. What made you want to lay roots in Banff? It's not the easiest place to call home, as we all know.
Yeah, look, I think it's probably a really common story here. I'd say the mountains drew me here, but it was the community that made me want to stay.
Yeah.
There's just something so unique and special about Banff. And I've traveled all over the world. I keep getting drawn back here. It has this real small town feel to it, which is great, has a great sense of community, but yet it's got this almost metropolitan vibe. There's this, vibrant nightlife. The restaurants we hear are fantastic. The Banff Fine Arts Center pulls in all these cultural arts from all over the world. And then it's plunked down right in the middle of a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Mhm.
You throw the awesome community we have in there into the mix, and out pops this perfect gem.
Crazy,
Like,
right?
it's hard not to love it. So
No doubt.
That's a
yeah.
good way to put it. A melting
Yeah.
pot of a lot of different aspects that make Banff what it is. And yeah, we love it. We love talking about it. That's for sure. What would be your advice to someone that wants to make Banff their long-term home?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think at first you really need to manage your expectation.
hmm
It's not easy to live. In fact, it's a privilege in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to put a price on that privilege, but the reality is it's high.
Yeah.
It's not super affordable here. So you kind of have to know that going in. You have to manage that expectation about, your lived experience here. We're densifying, places are getting smaller. If your dream is to have that house with a garage and a white picket fence, it's not super attainable here.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you factor all that in and you're like, hey, this is really where I want to be, I think the next advice I'd give is really connect yourself with the community.
hmm
Broaden your social circles. Like, it's not just about your friends. Get out there and connect with the community through Banff Life's got some great programs, some wonderfully passionate people like Michelle, she's
Yeah,
an awesome
for sure,
person,
For
like
sure.
get out there, engage on those levels, and go to like the community luncheons on Wednesdays above the library. Connect with the seniors in this
Mhm.
community as well, because the more you broaden those connections, not only does it deepen your connection with this town, but a lot of times how most of the sustainable housing that people find in this community is through those connections or
For
even
sure.
jobs, versus the traditional channels.
I would agree with you there. I think, most of my lodging that I've gotten over the years, and there's been quite a few,
Yeah,
because
word of
before
mouth.
I was a
Yeah.
responsible tenant, I was an irresponsible tenant. And let me
Yeah,
tell you, you don't
yeah.
really get too many renewals when you're blasting tunes. I once got a noise complaint for laughing too loudly at like 3 or 4 in the morning. But we had eaten some psychedelic mushrooms that night, and we were laughing really loud.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
God,
like
that's-
again, if you're
that's
an
awesome.
undesirable tenant, of course,
Yeah.
problems come with that. But even for a desirable tenant,
No doubt.
housing being one of the main issues here.
But you've been here for how long now?
20 years.
Geez, 20 years. So what made you decide that now was the time to get into a little bit of municipal politics?
Well, I'd say there's a bunch of things that factored in that decision. Some, a little more personal that I won't necessarily get into, but really, I've always been kind of interested in politics to some degree, especially at the municipal level. And there's just something about the municipal politics here. It's the complexity of it. And it's
Mhm.
maybe sounds strange, but it's like my brain was sucked into it like a moth to a flame in some ways.
Nice.
I crave sometimes that complexity. I think that's why I got my degree in math. I wasn't necessarily my focus right out of high school, but it was the more you get into the complexity and how, the higher levels of math, I just loved it.
Cool.
And so there's part of that. So that kind of always been in the back of my mind. But then, I also hit this milestone in my life where it's 25 years I've been in practice. And, I think I triggered something on my phone.
That's all right.
And, I came to this realization. I don't want to stop. I truly love what I do.
Mhm.
But if I'm going to continue to do it long term, it's very physical and I need to slow down. And then, part of me is kind of thinking I'd like to look for a new challenge. And then really, I think the real driving factor for me was just the feedback I got from the community. I just had so many people, patients, friends, family saying, hey, you should run. You should run. You should look at this. I think you'd probably be really good at it. And I think that community encouragement is probably really what drove me, because ultimately, what I'd love to do is be able to give back to this community even a fraction of what it's given to me. So,
And where do you think that community encouragement comes from? Does that stem from you being, maybe outspoken about where you think we should go as a town, or
Well,
just having the qualities that we might be looking for?
for sure. I mean, it's hard in this town to not sit down and have a conversation, and somehow politics at the municipal level
Yeah.
aren't woven into it. Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And certainly I would say a lot of that too. And one of the things I love about my job is just interacting with people as I'm treating them. And,
Mhm.
especially my long-term locals, we all tend to get into these conversations. Sure. So I think that's part of where that feedback kept coming from the community. It's like, hey, like you should really look at this. You seem really interested in it.
Mhm.
And then even like some of the people that have been on council and some former mayors that I know, and saying, some of the conversations I've had with them, the Stutz family are wonderful. And, Pat was really should really think about this.
Cool.
So yeah, there was some of that. There was a broad part of the community and multiple levels that were very
amazing. Great to know that you got some support out there for sure. You've seen Banff from both sides, both as a dad and a business owner, which we'll actually, before we get to that, we'll kind of talk, because me and Matt were talking about this before you got here.
Sure.
We were talking about the interesting kind of dichotomy of being a doctor, but also a frontline worker, because you are a frontline worker,
yeah,
but not in the direct
I guess
sense
not,
of the term and
not
the way
the
that
usual,
we need.
like
yeah,
not the
well,
usual.
like when we're
because I've
talking
heard you
about
guys,
dishwashers,
yeah,
or-
I've heard you guys use that term before,
Right?
and I'm like, well,
So
that's
maybe
not.
we've been misusing
No,
the
no,
term.
it's not necessarily. It can be applied.
Well,
to
that's what
many
I mean,
things,
right?
but-
We kind of
yeah.
all fall into that same boat. We're
Yeah,
just thinking about the interesting perspective that it brings,
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily what we think of when we talk about a frontline worker. How does that mix of experience for you shape the way you're going to approach things if you get voted into council?
Yeah, well, look, I think that's a really great question, because that diversity of perspective I have from the community is shaped by my lived experience.
Mhm.
You know, what I would loosely call cradle to grave, almost like daughter being born here, my parents, seniors here, and try to age here. But it's also shaped by the interactions, like I was talking about, with a broad sense of the community. I on a daily basis, I'm seeing and interacting and treating people from dishwashers to right up to small business owners to CEOs of the companies. So I get this real feel of this broader perspective and the needs of the community as a whole. And I think it's really important to really recognize that when you're making these complex decisions. Like I'll jump. This is getting a little ahead, but just say about the housing piece. Like you look at some of these
That's our next point.
projects
Let's get into it.
that the town's doing, and I think they're great. I love what they've done with Tinu and the Astor and sort of what they're looking at with the Wolf Street project. But I get that we're really trying to focus on putting quality roofs over people's heads, which is awesome. I think that's hugely what we need to do. But at the same time, I think there's some opportunity in those structures to actually build a better sense of community. Like, don't look at them as just a place that's housing somebody. Like, let's house frontline workers there. Let's have some space in there where they can decide they want to stay and they want to build a life in this community, whether that's family or not, I don't know. And then have space in there where seniors can be there and age in place, because there's tons of studies that show like those mixed generational buildings build such a huge, strong sense of community well-being.
True.
And so having that perspective when you're looking at these decisions, I think is really important. It's again, you're looking at these metrics and we're trying to drive the needle on these numbers. Great, but have a broader perspective on all of that when you're looking at things like that.
And how would they achieve some of that? Like certain floors for frontline workers, certain floors for aged citizens?
Well, it's a
what
little
is that?
hard
Yeah.
because, like I said, like you said, like,
Right.
hey, I can't see my senior's parents being housed right next to somebody who wants to party at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
for
no
sure.
doubt.
To be
Or
sure. But
taking mushrooms at 3 in the morning.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, having that perspective when you're looking at the planning process of trying to put those buildings together, I think is, and I don't necessarily say to you like, oh, well, this floor should be for this, but I would say the broader perspective of like trying to mix all of those needs together into a structure has a lot of value.
Because we've discussed that too, where we're talking about like, especially for young families, right? Like you've raised a family here, and finding a home that fits the needs of a young family is not always ideal.
No, it's
and
very
everyone
tough
keeps
here.
bringing up Valley View and all this. Like, okay, Valley View was great 20 years ago or whatever, 30 years ago. Like the reality is we were not going to get more developments like Valley View.
No, not at all.
Although making higher density for aged citizens might free up some of those
For sure. And like,
right? That's like,
it's interesting you bring this up because it's actually a conversation I've been having for some different people, but it's also a personal perspective. And I live up in Middle Springs, and that area was traditionally designed to fulfill that need for families in the community. And I'm looking at, well, I'm a single person. I have my daughter's looking, she's going away to university next year. It's just going to be me.
yeah.
And do I really need 1,800 square feet and a community that was really designed to try to meet that housing need? I almost feel like this moral obligation to like say, hey, I need to move away and move somewhere else in the town and free this up for somebody who really needs that,
So what's your perspective like in this situation? Because some people would be quick to kind of point the finger at you being the problem, so to speak.
For sure. But I mean, at the same time, like I've had some conversations with other people in the community that feel the same way, but then where do they go?
Right.
You know, where do you go in this community? And that's a hard one to really figure out because, you know, I look at, I lived actually just down the street here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I still have that condo, but it, you know, when I move back in there, I don't know, like I'm a garage guy. I would really like to see, like, I like to work in my garage, and is that really going to fit with my lifestyle? And then you know, the community piece, I love where I lived because of the connections I have to that area. I don't really want to move away from there. So there's a lot of pieces to that that's hard to figure out. And I can't say I got a firm answer on that yet, but you know, it's just interesting to have that perspective of like, you know, that's again, if we look on the broader way this town was structured and built, and we don't have a lot of other options for that piece, I feel this pull like to free that up, so to speak, for somebody who really needs that more than me.
I mean, it's cool to hear you say that, honestly. I don't mean to paint you in a bad brush at all, because I think people are entitled to their home ownership. Like you can't tell people to sell their homes or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like people online are super quick to condemn, especially people maybe running for these council positions and being like, well, they already have their housing figured out. They might not care about the plight of the normal or the, you know.
Yeah, but like nobody
citizen.
Moves to town and buys a house for their first housing, like, you know, like nobody moves to town and like, I'll check it out. I'll just buy a house and I'll check it out for a year. If it doesn't work out, you know what I mean? Like everybody's kind of gone through the same thing. Like you're gonna rent,
It's an important point to make that the people that do own have gone through the woes primarily, right?
Oh, so, big time.
Yeah.
I started out as a renter, and then I was in a condo and and moved all the way through there.
I don't mean to paint you.
No, it's all fair.
But it's you know, very commonly brought up thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the term like affordable housing? A lot of people throw that around. I think that's kind of a big issue when we're talking about developing more housing and who has access to it.
Right.
Are we talking about renting? Are we talking about for sale homes? Because like we said, the reality of purchasing a home, if you're working in the Bow Valley, it's not in reach of everyone.
No doubt.
So I don't know. How do we address that portion?
For sure. Well, look, I think there's a few things that I'd like to unpack in that question, but specifically around the housing, like, look, they're doing, the town is working well at trying to move that needle.
For sure.
I'm super excited about some of the development that's in the pipeline. I know there's some broader concerns in the community around that whole land use bylaw change and everything. And I'm not trying to belittle that. I think as a resident, I also have some of those concerns, but I think at this point, we really need to keep forward on that.
For sure.
Recent housing reports, I think it's 439 units that are in the planning works. And then there's even more that didn't even get captured in that report. I've talked to some of the major stakeholders and stuff. There's some big staff housing developments that are like big that are coming out that weren't captured in there. So it's really exciting to me to see that finally, like since I've been here in 20 years, seen very little progress. We're going to see some significant progress in regard, which is awesome.
And it's caught national news. Like it's getting national attention now, which again has brought some funding and some positives definitely there.
And then when you talk about that sort of affordable renting piece, there is something that kind of bugs me, and I'd really like to get into this, like meet with parks and see if like, is there some way we can maybe revisit the need to reside? Because I get when they first put it in, they were super focused on trying to restrict who can live here. And they didn't put any restrictions on who can own because, you know, they were looking more at the capital surplus. They didn't want to, necessarily crash the housing market in this town. But the ripple effect of that is we're seeing in the community a lot of outside ownership. And there's landlords that aren't in this community and big groups that are buying them up as investments. And and that's, unfortunately, I see the product of that is it's driving up rental prices in town, which really bothers me because look, like I said, I'm a landlord. I have a couple of rental properties in town, and I'll tell you right now, none of them are cash flowing. But I have a hard time because I look at the renters that are in there, and they're not only wonderful and great tenants that I want to keep there, but they're also great people in the community. They're struggling, and I look at that and go, I just can't. Even though my costs are going up, I just can't look and say, oh, I'm going to jack your rent up. And I'm in a fortunate position that I can afford a little bit to, in a sense, subsidize that. But if I had a rental property in Calgary, do you think I'd care?
Probably
no.
not.
I mean, it's an investment. I'd be looking at it as an from my investment hat. So, there's some benefit to that community connection. I'd really like to see if we can't sort of look at some ways of changing that a little bit so that the ownership is actually within the community as well. Yeah.
Well, if we talk about ownership, you look at some of the major attractions within our national park are not owned by Canadian companies, which is
like the last place that I lived at, like where we started the podcast, it's same thing. It got bought up by a nationwide rental company, like a property management, and it just like they straight up, like I'll say it, I don't care, I have nothing affiliated with them, but they straight up pushed out every single long-term tenant that was there to renovate their units and jack the rent. Yeah. And systematically, one by one, like I know people that were there for like 15 years, 20 years almost. And they're like, yeah, we're leaving. They're not renewing our lease. Like they want our unit. And that's exactly what happened to me. They're just like, we're not renewing your lease. We want the unit. You need to renovate it. Bingo, bango. And it's like,
so maybe having the landlords with more of that community
I'm not
connection
saying,
could lead to more retention down the line, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that would totally solve it, but to me, that would definitely be part of moving that needle on the rental affordability side of it.
Well, so, right, and they don't care. They're a nationwide company. They're like, we want those units, and they need to be renovated and rented out for $1,000 more a month. So get the people out, do whatever you got to do, and it like they literally evicted a lady because they didn't like her dog. She's like, it's just like, it's insane, like the stuff that they get away with. And it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to go up against like a multi-million-dollar company? Like, no, you're going to have to bite the bullet. And like, I'm still looking for a place. I got till December to find a place, and it's not easy, right? Like it's
not as it once was.
No,
that's for sure. Yeah. But again, like the 439 units is huge, and it is a step in the right direction. We mentioned the bylaws, the densification specifically in the parking bylaw. The parking bylaw is getting huge flack from opposition. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's something that needs addressing?
Well, look, I get it. Again, like I said before, I'm a resident here. I have the same concerns. I see constantly that parking's being taken away, not created.
Right.
And I get that's a part of the long-term vision of Banff. Like we don't want to be a car community, which part of me really agrees with. So I understand the concern, but like I said, I almost look at that bylaw change as an emergency measure that was needed to unclog the pipeline.
Yeah.
And we're finally seeing something happen. And
so
I'm really hesitant to have that knee-jerk reaction of saying, we need to turn that back because we think it's going to be a big problem. I mean, logic to me would dictate and say, well, yeah, people are going to have cars.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have, but do we really know? Because we've also the town did a study, and I believe they identified it's almost 200 spaces in the community that are empty.
Corey mentioned it in her episode and the studies that they've done with the resident permitted parking, that 200 plus stalls still vacant or available. So
again, I think we kind of need to really keep a close eye on that, and from what I understand, that is the town's. That's what they're going to do. But as a counselor, you really need to keep a close eye on that. And like I would say, the finger on the button, the second we see that becoming a problem, then we need to let's address this right away.
It's not like we can't revisit it in the future, right?
And everyone that we've spoken to has definitely mentioned that as an option of revisiting or adding or implementing. I
would say also, I almost draw a bit of a correlation to that, to the paid parking thing. And I'm not trying to belittle those concerns, but you remember the fee, the community was in an up. They were picketing outside the town hall. Town hall, actually, the councilors had an evacuation plan because they were worried riots were going to break out. I was like,
it's over parking.
Really? It's parking, and now we have paid parking, and everybody's like, oh, well, it's not really as big a deal as we thought it was going to be. So that's what I say, about the whole knee-jerk reaction thing. Some of these things we have to try.
Right.
If we're going to try and move the needle, we got to be creative, and we got to try some things. And really, in a lot of ways, we may have to make sacrifices as residents. I had this wonderful conversation with somebody the other night, and he literally said the question to me, well, what's more important to you? That somebody has a good quality roof over their head, or they have somewhere to park their car. And I'm not trying to be facetious and say this isn't a concern, but really that is the perspective that I think as a resident, we kind of need to really look at. Right. If we really truly care about the housing problem we have here, well, then we may have to like really think about, well, you know, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. So.
I think that's a good point to make. I think as townspeople, me and Matt included, we're very quick to want it all and not give anything up.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about housing and we're talking about limited space and the situation that we're in, it's going to have to be a give and take. And I think the sooner, I had it written on my other sheet, you spoke in the beginning about managing expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very key point to bring up.
Right.
I think that's one thing we're going to have to move forward as council and townspeople, is managing our expectations in regards to solving these problems, and the fact that quick solutions may not be the answer. It's going to have to be a give and take, right? Like, you want housing, where are we going to put it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to have to cost something. So all this boils down to one term that we've been throwing around quite a bit, very hot topic, the term over-tourism. David, what does it mean to you? Do you think it's a problem we're faced with here in Banff?
It's actually a great question. And, you know, it wasn't really, it's definitely a term that's becoming more and more popular, but what I find interesting about it is when I'm posing this to people and, you know, especially when I'm out in the community and talking about these things, there's almost this immediate emotional response when you say that word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different for different people.
It's always negative.
And it's almost always negative.
Yeah.
Not always, but mostly negative.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different negative emotion for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start really, I've found in even my professional career is like, if there's an emotional component to the response, you first got to acknowledge that and then start really weaving through that whole conversation to get down to it. And, you know, I think that you've probably heard this mentioned many times, that it often comes down to cars. We have a car problem, not a people problem. But I think there is a component to it that is that people problem. People just feel kind of like it's super congested here, you know, and I think this segues right into one of the other questions you were talking about, I can't remember the exact question, but something about the feel of the residents from the impact of the overvisitation. And, you know, to me, like somehow you address that is, I'm going to segue into a little story here.
Please
because,
do, yeah.
It kind of leads into why. So when I first filed my decided I'm going to run, you know, and I filed my nomination papers, I had given so much time and thought and energy into like, is this something I really want to do? Is it something I'm going to find fulfilling? Do I think I can make a difference? And then I filed my nomination papers and I walk out of town hall with this big smile on my face, and it was like somebody slapped me. It's like, oh, I gotta run a campaign. You know, I'm like, I'm not a politician. So I'm on my computer trying to figure out, well, like, what do you do? Well, you gotta, you know, come up with your mission statement and, you know, basically how you're gonna address the issues on the country, like address the issues. Like, so one of the first things, obviously, on everybody's mind is this whole congestion piece and cars and everything else. And everybody's talking about, oh, like we need to look outside the community. So impulsively, I like, okay, I gotta go somewhere and see what they're doing. And so I call up my friend, and who's one of my best friends, and we both love riding motorcycles. I was like, hey, do you want to go to Zion National Park? He's like, yeah, when? I was like, this weekend. So we jump on our bikes, we ride down there like massive 16-hour days to get there, ride through Zion National. Great model. Such a beautiful area for one. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but you got to get there. It's unbelievably breathtaking. But, you know, they're managing that piece very well there, but it's coming from a federal level. So it's not something, you know, as a municipality we can really do here, in the sense that they basically have gates, they have intercept parking, they have, you know, timed entry, they have all these pieces, but it is managed at the park gate.
Right.
And they have buses, but their buses are run by the federal government. And, you know, they're doing a good job of sort of managing that piece, but I'm like, okay, well, I don't necessarily see how a municipality we can do this. So I'm flying back, you know, and I listen to podcasts when I'm riding my bike, and I punched all these ones in my phone before we left. And I somewhere, I don't know, after a couple hours, I get to this woman who was from New Zealand tourism, I think it was. And she's starting to talking about this whole concept of regenerative tourism.
Yes.
And I'm sure this is something you've heard recently.
We've broached it before.
But it was nothing that I'd ever heard of. And I'm like, man, I was almost coming off my bike. I'm so excited. I'm like, this is it, man. This is what we need this year. And I'm like, I get so excited, and I get home and I get back to Banff and I sit down on my computer, and I'm like, it took me 30 seconds to find the lead tourism for good vision from the Banff. I'm like, crap, we already have it here.
Sure.
And I was like, and they've been doing it for 3 years. Yeah. And they spent a year doing it and they engaged over 2,000 people in the community. I'm like, how have I not heard of this? This is crazy. Like, okay, well, maybe I'm just ignorant and too wrapped up in my life. So when I'm out the door knocking, it was one of the questions I was asking people. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this lead tourism? And like none. 2 people that work for Banff Lead Tourism.
Oh,
so
no, that makes sense.
one of the first things I did is like I reached out to I know the CEO of the Banff Lead Tourism, and I said, look, this is great. This is an amazing vision, but like why part of that whole regenerative tourism piece is really pulling in the community. I'm like, why? And then in that lead tourism for good vision is this whole piece about community well-being, and I'm like, how can we actually do this better? And I think one of the first motions that I want to make if I'm elected is I want to rename the visitor paid parking reserve to the tourist community fund. Because I mean, it's semantics. It's just a little visual thing, but that's what it's there for. And that is actually doing these pieces, these regenerative tourism pieces. We're using that money to try and make the community better. We're trying to do initiatives with that money to help our community. But I think it's kind of being lost in a lot of ways. People look at that as like, oh, it's this money that's coming in, but they're not making that connection that, hey, this tourism, all these tourists coming here, it's actually helping us in some ways make our community better.
For sure. And there's like, we've discussed this in the past, and there's a big element of biting the hand that feeds, so to speak, right? Over-tourism painted so negatively, and you know, we need tourists here.
Well, and I get it, but it's that little step further of like, I realize that I'm a business owner and it's pretty obvious to me, and I feel the impact and frustration. I drive, if I'm driving down the street, a tourist jumps out in front of me because they want to take a picture. It drives me nuts. And I used to like just say, take a deep breath, grin and bear it. We need them here. They're the driving force for our economy. But it almost like dehumanizes them. They're like a dollar 100%. Bill that's like, oh, I need you here because you're helping fund and you're the whole reason that I get to be here. But
I don't want you here. I need you here.
They're, in a lot of senses, they're part of the community, and we really need to try and, as a community, look at it that way. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to belittle the whole thing. I do think there's a lot of thing around that visitor management that we need to do. But if we can at least start there and sort of make that sort of change or mind shift, if you will, as a community, I think that certainly helps move the needle. And then you can segue right into this whole thing about visitor use management and some of those things about car congestion and all of that, which I think we're going to talk about here.
Let's get right into traffic, right? How does this all relate? We said we had a car problem. How do we mitigate this? Is this like, is a cap of vehicles in the summer months something you would support, or is like, we mentioned time to entry, we mentioned reservation systems in the past. Is like, what are your thoughts on how we mitigate this?
Well, look, first off, I'll say I'll take nothing off the table. Like, those are all things I'm willing to explore. The real challenge with that is, as a municipality, and you've probably heard this before, there's very few tools we would have to really implement a lot of those things. So if that's as a broader community, what we really want to see, we need to, first off, not just, we keep talking about collaboration and collaborating with parks. It's got to go a step further than that. It's got to be, we got to come at this as a united front with Parks Canada, because, when we talk about car congestion, all these things, to me, it's not rocket science. It's been around for a long time. I think actually you posed that question in here to me, and I was thinking about it. I remember coming here in the 1980s when we'd come back from the ski hill, and I distinctly remember this one time. So, all the kids were all like, we wanted to go to the Grizzly House, to go to the fondue. And my dad's like, I can still remember him cursing because he's like, I can't find parking here. It's too many people. We'll just stop at Peter's Drive-In in Calgary. So it's been an issue for a really long time. And the town's looked at this several times. And I mean, they did. I'm going to hang on it because some of these names I've forgotten. So the Banff long-term transportation study, or what a lot of people call the static study, because that's who they commissioned to do it, that was in 2016. And then the expert advisory panel on moving people sustainably in the Banff Bow Valley. That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So that was the one that Parks commissioned in 2021. You know, and so you look at all these reports, and they make a bunch of different suggestions, but generally, the common theme is you need some mass transit. You need intercept parking because people still come in cars. You need a mobility hub to get them out of the car. Then you need some sort of regional transit to move them efficiently to the areas you want to go.
Yeah.
So, and you look at all of these models all over the world where they're doing that efficiently. And yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Like I was in Ischgl, Austria last spring, and, you know, great ski hill, huge, the thousands and thousands of people there, almost no cars around. But they have 4 large intercept parkings. And like one of them, I was literally walking along the sidewalk, and like there's this big field with cows moving, like grazing on it. And then all of a sudden this car pops out. And I walk over and look, it's a 1,000 car parkade underneath the ground with, you know, with this field.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what Grant Canning was talking about some underground. Like, I don't know. I always see cost as an issue. Everyone's cost. Well, look, I don't know. I want to see a Banff National Park where cost, maybe when it comes to protecting the environment, is not an issue, right? Like, I get it. Developers need to get paid. People need to make money, but I don't know. I love the idea of underground parking. Like,
yeah,
I love it.
Look, I do too. But, you know, and yeah, you can say cost, but really, have you explored, or like, has anybody looked at there isn't, the town hasn't actually studied it, but we have a number. We know kind of what it costs, especially in the mixed, at least in the mixed residential buildings, what it costs to build underground parking.
Andre gave us a pretty good breakdown.
Did he?
Andre Kenneville during his episode of the cost of building above ground versus underground parking. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out that episode.
Well, anyways, I'll skip right to the end of that. Like when I looked at it and thought it through, you're looking to build the parking structure we would need underground, probably $400 million, close to $500 million if you look at costs. So I mean, that's a lot of. You say, yeah, we shouldn't have put a price on the park. Well, that's a big price.
Maybe that's pretty crazy.
So that's huge. Like
that might be a little steep, you know.
So the reality of seeing that versus, you know, the realistic and then, you know, you got this huge hole in the ground and it'll take us 40 to 50 years to pay it back. And is that really what we want? Because in 40 to 50 years from now, we might not need it, and we'll get this giant hole in the ground.
What technologies will be available to us?
I would have thought if you'd asked me 50 years ago, I would say we'd have flying cars by now. Yeah. I would think it's more realistic to expect that in 50 years from now, we probably will. So
Fair. How does the train station ARP fit in all of this then? Since we're talking about this mass transit, moving people, what are your thoughts? You for it, against it?
Well, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's obviously a very talked about issue in the town. And there's a lot of emotion around it, for sure. I think in some ways it's almost been vilified. But I will say this, at this point, it's just a plan. To me, that's an aspirational idea.
Yeah.
As a vision or aspirational idea, I like it. It's basically doing like we just talked about. It is, and we have intercept parking. There's a parking lot there. We're looking at creating a mobility hub, spot to welcome visitors into the community. Get them out of their car, have them interact right away with like, okay, where do you want to go? What other parts of the park do you want to see versus dumping them in the downtown core, having them walking aimlessly around trying to find, you know, Banff Lake Louise tourism and
figure it out,
their tour or whatever they want to do. Yeah. Have those interactions right there available for them. And I see a lot of benefit to that. It's not just like, you know, there's all this talk about, you know, well, we're trying to create Disneyland and all this stuff. And I don't really think that's a lot of the goal really of the resident or of the business community, but you know, there's some more opportunity there to like, let's get them out of their car early and really give them opportunities of ways that they can interact with the park, maybe in a more meaningful way. Or if that's the experience they want, if that's what they get out of coming to the park, great, take the bus downtown and, you know, go shopping and have your burger or whatever it is. So I really like that vision, you know, and the wonderful thing that I say is one of the benefits of living within the park is there's a lot of checks and balances in place here. Right, you can't have development just go through and without it actually being significantly looked at. So it's undergoing this, you know, SEA right now. That's quite intensive.
Well, that's it. Like everything that happens here has gone through with a fine tooth comb, which we got to, you know, the environmental assessments being done right now by Parks Canada. Everyone's kind of super interested to see what that report's going to bring. Because I don't know, like I've been for and against, and I don't know. I'm flip flopping on it because I think at its base, it's a great concept. I love the idea. Getting people here on mass transit, I think it would be great for international tourists to not have to rent vehicles and be able to get here on a train experience. It kind of adds a little bit more fun to it.
Well, like I said, we've got like the bus to Minnewanka, Lake Louise, like
you wouldn't need a vehicle.
Like when I moved here, that didn't exist. Like if you wanted to go to Minnewanka, it was like you drive up there, or you get a homie to drive you up there. Like there's no bus that's going to take you up there. Like I've taken public transit up to freaking Lake Tujac with all my camping gear and literally just set up and camped for 2 days, got back on the bus with my gear and came back to town for $2. You know what I mean? Like we have these ways to get people around like the immediate surrounding areas. So it's like the need for a car. I mean, you kind of don't really need it in the park. And like, even like the lake or what am I saying? Moraine. Like now you just hop on a shuttle, you go up to Lake Moraine for the day. You don't have to drive. You don't have to worry about parking. And just like, we have these ways to do it. Like, let's just make it better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Like when I first moved to Banff, I tried not to have a car. Yeah. It was almost impossible. The public transit. There wasn't public transit. There was a private company. They initially contracted in the town, and it was so horrible. I still remember the guy smoking, in the bus. He's driving along Main Street. Funny. I was like, it was just a horrible experience, and that was just to move around Banff. So like even my daughter, she's 17, I can't get her to get her driver's license because she's like, I don't need a car. Yeah. I can go whatever. I'm like, okay, well, that's an interesting perspective, and maybe you don't need that, but it's that's very much more available now than it used to be. So I would just love to see that needle progressed in that direction for sure.
I'm not sure that the day trippers will leave their cars at home, or I don't know.
There's a lot of that because hey, I'm an Alberta boy. I was growing up here. Albertans in particular are married to their cars because that's how we grew up. Well, there is no there's a lot broader acceptance of that no car thing in, say, Europe, where there's much better interconnectivity, public transit that doesn't exist here. And I would love to see that. Yeah, for sure. They talked about a Edmonton to Calgary train since I was knee high, and I would love to see that. It does sound like maybe they're really, looking at exploring that. It would be great to see that connect with the train from Banff. I would see that as an opportunity to really maybe decrease those day trippers, cars coming. And I think you probably would see that happen based upon, there's some other ways we can incentivize that depending upon, that's why I say mass transit is not the only solution. We still need to look at these parking pieces, but that we make it, it's, you want to drive, well, there's a cost for that. So,
Is there a point where, I don't know, we raise the point of parking, like say to Lake Louise levels where we're talking $40 where it becomes exclusionary in your view?
Well, and one of the things that I would like to, look at is, maybe more dynamic parking. Paid parking.
Interesting.
So at times at peak need and demand, the price goes up. And at times when it's low, it's it's less.
Well, the hotels have been doing that for years. You know what I mean? Like you want to come out here.
Concept though. No one's brought that to our attention yet. That's a new piece.
So you're really just again trying to drive that piece of like decentivizing people from driving, and there's a cost for it.
But that's it.
So you want to come at peak times and you want to park downtown. Well, there's a huge price for that. If you want to park further out in the community, that's less. You want to park somewhere else, and then it's free. You know what I mean?
And then you're talking about as well as kind of re-incentivizing people to come at different times too, so it could spread that congestion around. We're talking about timed entry without having timed entry. You know what I mean? Ways to achieve these goals. But I think the human management framework is kind of the way that they're looking at it, is how do we achieve these goals without, you know what I mean, being exclusionary or being restrictive, right? Because I don't think like a cap on people or cars is the way. Like you said, being on Highway 1, you can't restrict people jurisdictionally, right? No. It's just in that like freedom of rights movements. You can't. It's a major infrastructure highway of Canada. You can't tell people no. There's also issues with the reservation system of that same exact thing. Once all the spots are taken in town, well, you can't tell someone they can't come in to drive around still, even though there isn't a parking. Or I'm just going to try. I do that skill all the time. I'm still going to try.
It definitely happen.
So
yeah. And even beyond that, it's like, is that really as a community what we want to do? Like,
no, I don't think so.
The number one mandate in the Corporation Act is we are to act as a welcoming hub for the visitors for the park.
Exactly.
How are we really fulfilling that role if we're putting up a sign saying we don't want you here? We're full, go away. So yeah, I'm saying definitely we need to look like that human use management framework. I call it the hump.
The hump.
That's great. It's great vision, and that is the kind of things we really need to work at or look to long term to find these effective solutions. Because again, like I can sit here and say, this is what I would like to see, but that doesn't work long term because it has to work for everyone. We need to all kind of come together and have this vision, or like, look, here's what we all want. This is the end goal. And I think there is some commonality there that's often missed in the conversations, like, around this parking piece. Like there's this push and pull between parks and the town in some senses. And I think really in the end of the day, look, we're trying to accomplish the same thing in some ways. The congestion isn't just impacting the visitor experience and the residential experience, it's impacting the wildlife experience.
For sure.
They're not moving very freely throughout this community. I know it's very important we protect those wildlife corridors, but I think it's also important we try to decrease the congestion from the wild perspective and the broader ecosystem around us. They're dumping pollution all over the place. So, we kind of have some commonality in that goal of like, let's try to protect our environment while we're also trying to decrease this congestion and manage that better.
100%.
So, if we could kind of get together and talk about that on a more collaborative level. So, yeah.
I think we've discussed it in prior episodes as well. And that discussion needs to kind of extend to our neighbors too, right? We look down at Canmore, we look up at Lake Louise and Jasper, and it's like we're all experiencing the same things. And I think a collaborative approach to mitigating it is probably going to get us farther than all fighting our own fights. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Like the last thing we want to do is have, again, some big knee-jerk reaction here where we put in some initiative and it has a ripple down effect where it's now affecting other communities. So we really need to bring all of that in.
And I think we should avoid at all costs, like I said, being exclusionary or trying to tell people, no, you can't come in. No, you can't. Right. I think if someone were to tell me no, what I wanted, I would be pretty upset with that. Right. I don't think people want to come back when they have that visitor experience when they get here. And maybe if it's an uninformed visitor experience, they get here and everything's full and blah, blah, blah.
For sure.
It's not too fun from a user standpoint either. Right. So I don't know. We talked a lot recently in the last couple of minutes about looking down the line, and the Banff Community Plan does exactly that, culminating a whole bunch of plans together. What are your thoughts on how that's put together? And do you think there's any points that are maybe missing or?
Oh, look, I really like the Banff Community Plan. I like how they've pulled a lot of pieces and vision into that, including sort of the lead tourism for good vision. The only real challenge, and I get that document is meant for long range planning, but it's it's very visionary and it's talking about without really any hard metric in there of like, okay, how are we going to measure that we're actually moving the needle towards these various goals that we have. So it's kind of hard. I would have liked to seen at least some sort of metric in some of those regards in there. So, and I think one of the other questions you asked me is what is the most important part of that community plan, and I will kind of segue right into something else about that. Is that the section in there about community well-being, and I would say I'll read the quote right from there if I can. It's focusing on ensuring access to essential services, social connection, and inclusive community, which includes addressing findings of the child care assessment. Another special, and I would say that's the piece that I really want to focus on. This childcare piece, I think, is really, a lot of people have talked about it for sure, but we're not really moving the needle on that. And to me, it's not just a lived experience that I went through. It's also based on a lot of the feedback that we're getting from the community, and it really feeds into that community piece. I think one of the other actually really interesting questions you asked was something about, we have a community retention problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I totally agree with. And a huge part of that is around childcare.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I know personally at least 2 families, wonderful people, members of the community that had to move away this summer, not because they didn't have a good job, not because they didn't have a home, but because they couldn't find daycare and they couldn't afford to be here on a single income anymore. So they've left and moved away. And I hate seeing that happen here. To me, childcare is almost, I would slap the label crisis. We've used the term crisis for the housing shortage we're having here. Yeah. We have a crisis and we've done very little to move that needle around. And they've got they had the childcare assessments needs analysis done here in 2024. And one of the first initiatives that they said in there was we need to find creative solutions. Well, I mean, let's get creative and let's think on the short term. Let's find some creative little solutions of things we can do. I used to sit on the Daycare Society of Banff board.
Oh, cool.
And so I literally had today another conversation with the executive director. And I'm like, look, if I get to council, like, I'm your champion. You tell me what red tape you're running into and I'll cut it.
Because I'm glad you made that link, because I think that the community retention problem, when I think about people that I know that have had to move away, it's directly linked to childcare, or like we talked about it in a housing perspective. But
was it Kaylee Ram last week we were talking about it, and she said that they were on like a 2-year waiting list for childcare, and it's like, it's just insane. It's like you almost have to, like, when you find out, congratulations, you're having a baby.
Or
It's
you're
like,
trying. You gotta start,
like
before you even, as soon as you find out, you got to get your name.
We're gonna try next year. We should probably get on the list.
Get on the list.
But that I would say crisis would be the apt term to slap on that for sure.
Well, and like you said, David, like you can't run a family on a single income in Banff right now, like unless it's an extraordinarily large single income. You know what I mean? Like I don't know anybody that's a stay-at-home mom in town for the most part. You know what I mean? It's you need that income, especially when you have a child.
Yeah,
like it's not an easy thing to do. So
what are some of the ways that we can?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, like, short term, thinking about those crises, but we also got to look long term, because as we grow the community through densification, it's going to become an even bigger need. And if we don't start looking now at some long term effective solutions, so things around, like, again, when we talk about those structures, those community buildings, I would like to see some spaces explored where it's not just for like community and residents and stuff to meet. Well, like, can't we make that functional as a daycare that can shift to that community need in the evenings or the weekends?
Right.
Or looking at more long-term structures. One of the things it would be a large capital project, so I'm not entirely certain I want to like push this just yet, but I'd love to see our library. I'd like to see a whole new structure built for our library. I think libraries are really key anchors of a community, and it's often almost sort of overlooked in
this day and age. And
then our library has this wonderful thing. I don't know if the Library of Things. Have you seen
it's
that?
great!
Isn't that awesome?
It's amazing.
So we've already been. It's brought up a couple times in some of the forums, and we said, we should really look at expanding it. Wouldn't it be great to have a space so you can use it? Well, actually, the more I think about it, I'm like, that's actually a critical need in this community. As we're trying to solve our housing issues through densification, we really need those spaces where people they're not going to have a garage. They're not going to have somewhere where they can use a saw. They're going to be out in a parking lot. Like, so those things are really important community pieces that I think would, are really needed. And then, let's look at building a structure that's got better facilities for seniors and a big daycare facility in it. So, again, it's like, it's great to have that aspirational vision. The reality that's a large capital project for sure. So, but it's something I definitely would like to explore.
My thoughts were maybe to legislation, maybe away from big infrastructure projects and into maybe more the town letting that specific type of business happen in people's homes.
Well, yeah, for sure. And
right?
You touched on another really big piece there too, is like, we need to like really look at ways that we can incentivize or encourage day homes, because we don't have enough of them. It's kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit over the time, but I think somebody said to me now there's only one in the community. So, some ways we can do that for sure. I think would be great. And if there's some red tape in regards that we can shift around, I think that's a really great short-term solution for sure. But again, long-term, I think as that need builds, we're not going to fill it with just day homes, because day homes can only fill like, five, six, and we're talking like right now we have space for, I think it's 80 kids, and there's 100, the needs assessed was 160. So double. We're already short double. So even if we open up a bunch of day homes and even another space, we're barely going to scratch the surface on trying to fill the need we have now. And then long term, it's just going to get more. So that's why I say, like, we need to start really thinking more long term. And because I mean, something like, well, for instance, like that, if that library thing were to happen, they're not going to knock it down and build a new one tomorrow. That's probably 8, 9, 10 years away. Like, but that's the kind of long term thinking I think we need to have when we're looking at these kind of issues.
Right. So, I would agree with you there.
No doubt.
I'd like to see a world where maybe we can house the elderly and have them watch the kids.
Yeah.
And then, they get companionship.
Well, again, there's just so many really interesting studies to show that, again, that's the community building that sense of community, but it's also so beneficial for the seniors.
For sure.
The seniors thrive so much better in those environments than in a senior's home.
For sure.
Right.
There's very little interaction with them and the rest of the community in those spaces. So, yeah, absolutely. Seeing them interact with the kids, I would love to see that. I think it would be really super beneficial for this community.
Second grandma?
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know, tying into your whole kind of chiropractor wellness thing, have you ever seen the documentary about the blue zones in the world?
No.
These things, it's on Netflix, but there's these places in the world called blue zones where people tend to live longer.
Yeah.
And it kind of all ties into it, right? Yeah. And I think like it ties also into aging in place and the sense of community, right? We've been kind of broaching that topic, which I must admit we kind of forgot about in the first few candidates about aging in place. And I don't know, maybe that sense of community is that missing piece to the puzzle. So
for sure. And I mean, for me personally, it goes a little bit out because my parents are now, they're actually, their plan is they're going to move away next year because there's a gap in the community where they just don't fit.
Yeah.
And they can't get in, their income's too high. They can't get into Mount Edith House. They can't really move into Cascade House because that doesn't really fit their need right now. So there's this, they're moving to Cochrane because there's a space in a community or a housing development there that really fits that age in place need. And I'm like, it's sad for me. I don't want to think that. It's still a year away, but
for sure.
So I'd like to see if we can't really meet that need better here in this community.
But I mean, it also makes you think of your own future. Like you'd probably want to stay here. I want to stay here, right? Like,
I'd love to say that I'm going to stay here till the day I die.
Yeah, I think we all would, right?
Thinking about that long term is like, what happens to me? Where do I go? And again, even that whole piece of like, if I'm going to move out of Middle Springs, where do I go? And where do I don't want to just move in another place and think, okay, well, I'm going to move again when I'm 70, I want to think more long term of like, okay, let's find a space where this fulfills my need now, but I can stay and age in place there.
Spend your days in the place you love, which we would all love to do, right?
Yeah, no doubt. That's what I'm planning on.
So, David, here's the big one. Why should we vote for you?
Well, look, I think it's, again, that diverse perspective that I have. It's based on my lived experience, cradle to grave, and that also shaped by my experience in my profession where I interact with the community on such a regular basis. My profession has also taught me I'm a business owner. I got to look at my business practices constantly through that fiscal lens, which I think is really important. And then it's also taught me to like really listen well and to pull all of that perspective and the relative information in when I'm trying to make a decision process. I think a lot of those pieces fit really well into council and trying to make those decisions. And then beyond that, look, I'm a member of this community and I'm your neighbor. I'm not some politician. I'm still very approachable. And I will say, if I do get elected, I can promise you that my decisions will probably not always align with yours and maybe never. I have no idea. But I'm very approachable. I'll be very transparent. I'm very honest. I'm very open-minded. I'm always willing to listen. I'm still that same person.
Nice.
And then, ultimately my motivation is, like I said at the very beginning, I truly want to give back to this community a fraction of what it's given to me. So I hope I can do that.
Fair enough. Well,
amazing.
Well said.
Yeah. And I think, to highlight as well that most people get into, medicine or chiropractor or to help people. right?
Yeah.
So I think probably
100%. I would say that
just
is
personal ethos is helping people.
You know, we could have a whole nother episode on how I ended up where I am, but that is literally why I picked my job and why I care and love it so much. Is that is probably a driving core value in me is I love helping people. And you know, it's
maybe kind of the next step to take care of the town kind of as a whole, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing.
Well, we've asked this question to basically everybody in the past, I don't know, couple months. What are you most hopeful for when you think about the future of Banff?
It's a great question. Look, I think I'm very hopeful that all the vision we have in these plans, the Lead Tourism for Good, the Banff Community Plan, actually comes to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful that the community isn't just surviving but thriving.
Right.
And I guess ultimately I'm hopeful that when I leave Banff, whatever that looks like, that it's better than when I found it.
Yeah.
And that I played some small part in that.
I think that would be a cool thing to say, that you could put your name on that, you know?
Yeah.
One point that kind of stands out to me is taking action, you know? We can talk and we can plan all day, but if the plans don't get put into motion, or if there is no follow through on plans, then it's just talk, right?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
So
100%.
I think that's got to be a focus definitely into the next term and beyond, and looking past it, right?
We could talk all day. Actually, we did just talk all day.
We do talk
basically.
all day.
Yeah, we did.
That's what we do.
We did just talk all day. But yeah, sooner or later something's got to get done, right? So
100%. It's great to have vision. It's great to talk about plans and how we're going to get there, and it's great to put together committees and get input. But we got to have action.
Yeah.
But we got to have good foresight into what action we want versus just trying to have knee-jerk reactions and
shoot in the
kick
dark
the ball in
and
one direction.
hope
that it's going to be the best.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us,
Yeah,
Dave.
that's
Great
great.
to meet
Thank you guys.
Thank you so
Super nice to meet you guys.
Yeah,
both.
great to put a face to everyone's name. And again, like kind of caught you at the Biosphere Institute. I wasn't there, but I caught it kind of the next morning.
Oh, cool.
And after hearing you speak, I was very interested to sit down and kind of pick your brain on these issues, because they only give you so much time.
Well, yeah,
you know?
and that one forum we had, it was really good, that the Hospitality Association, but we only got a minute.
Yeah.
And my daughter said to me
wow.
after, she's like, they should have called it the Minute to Win It. Because I'm like, that's really actually kind of true. It was like, how do you define who you are in a minute? Like, it was very hard.
I don't think anybody can do that.
Well, maybe Banff Lake Louise Tourism needs to reach out and we could put it on next year. Or in the next 4 years, you know.
Well, no, but I think these, like we talked about before, what you guys are doing is great, because it allows people to really understand who the candidates are, and you know, in some ways, almost humanizes them in some ways, because you know, it's hard to put you can look at a face and a name, but you don't really know who they are, and do you really want them to be your voice on council?
For sure,
exactly.
So,
that's why we're doing it.
It's really good.
I was kind of thinking, when we're putting this concept together, when we put the interviews together, it's like, what would I want to know from my candidates, right? And I'm thinking, if I'm thinking this, probably
somebody else is thinking the same.
Someone on the other end, is thinking the same. So
that's really interesting. It's funny though. I knocked on somebody's door, I think yesterday, and then she said, "Oh, I haven't made my decision yet. I'm waiting for all of the Overheard podcasts to get finished. And I'm going to listen to them." I'm like, "Hey, that's great." And then I thought about it after. I'm like, because I told you I've been binging listening to your show, and it's like, that's like 14 hours of material you're going to wait through. You better get on that pretty quick. So
I mean, we do put some clips out. The clips are kind of to get people to the fuller. But again, like, I want to give people.
No, it's great.
Give people the time.
It's really, like I said, that's a really great way. And so thank you again, you guys, for doing this.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We're going to keep doing it. Thank you. We got one more episode to conclude our election coverage. It is coming to you tomorrow evening, due to rescheduling. But we've had a great time. We've learned a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
We all want the same things.
Oh, ultimately, like I said,
right?
Like I said when I was talking about that whole collaboration piece, I think in the end of the day, that's lost in the conversation a lot of times.
We're all in the same boat.
Really, we kind of all in the same boat. We love this place. We love the environment. Like, let's kind of come together under the umbrella and have some more productive conversations. So,
I would agree. And I think putting the people in the places, putting the people that we think best represent us in the places that matter will move us forward. Like we mentioned this in the prior episode, big light bulb moment for me was when more people showed up to the pet zone vote than any town council election ever. So our goal is to try to get people mobilized. And if you're unhappy, the choice is literally yours. You can go in and vote for who you want, and then you can complain about it all you want after. If you don't vote, don't complain. You know, stay off the internet. Like,
stay off the just don't use the internet at all.
I was trying to think of a campaign slogan when I was doing all this, and the first thing that popped in my head was "Your vote, your Banff."
Yeah.
So, and that's literally, you can't make it more simple than that. It's your Banff, and you want to try and shape how it goes. Well, you have a choice right now to elect the people that you want driving the ship. And then, you know, in the end of the day, they're not going to, we can't, if I'm on council, it's not all up to us. The whole community's got to come behind and push that boat forward. So we can kind of steer it if that's where everybody, you know, wants to go. But
a good analogy to end us off. So thank you everyone for listening. Thanks for joining us today. If you've joined us for all 4 episodes, man, you're champions.
No doubt.
Hit that like and subscribe. We got plenty more coming after the election. We got some pretty cool stuff planned for, I think, the swearing in. So stay tuned for some very cool episodes coming to you in the future. And that's all the time we have today. Big thanks to Drink Shaft. Big thanks to the Rose and Crown. Town of Banff's been awesome. Big thanks to all the council hopefuls taking the time, come and chat with us. Like every week.
See you next Tuesday.